Hello, everyone. Trump appears to be shocked and disappointed, and as he described it, not at all happy with his phone call with Putin, because what he really wants, which is to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, keeps not happening. Now, any sensible person could have told him that this was not possible, but there don't appear to be any of those in his immediate surroundings. Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov said that the call was frank and substantive, and that Russia will pursue its stated objectives in this conflict. And we already know what its stated objectives are. That is basically to overrun Ukraine. They said as much. They said Ukraine is ours, period. So, to that end, there's no debating with them. There's no reasoning with them. That's what they want. So, considering that that is not okay with, people who happen to live in Ukraine, trying to end all of this with one phone call is clearly just not gonna cut it. Zelensky also had a call with Trump and said it was meaningful, but I think based on what he is doing, what Zelensky is doing, the steps he's taking right now, this is all just theater. Because at the same time, he is actively working with European allies and with the UK on military training, military research, technology expansion, and so on and so forth. So I think there is understanding on the other side of the Atlantic that the US is a complete wild card at this point. And the stance is, if they decide to become sane again and decide to honor their promises to their allies, great. And if they don't, we have to be prepared to do without. Case in point, the withholding of the air defense missiles. And again, we now have a confirmation that not only was this already approved and budgeted for under the Biden administration, we also have confirmation that this would have not in any way impacted U.S. national security or anything that takes place with U.S. military here, domestically. This would have not caused any cuts to the U.S. military when it comes to protecting American people. This would have not put anybody in jeopardy. This would have not been any danger, nothing. So this decision announced by Pete Hegseth was actually a bit shocking, not only to the European allies and to Ukraine, but also to people in the Pentagon, because they too cannot understand what is the rationale behind this, especially in light of the increasing and expanding Russian attacks. There is a little bit of a difference. When I said increasing frequency, and I said expanding, it means they're using more and more stuff to throw at Ukraine. If you look at the series of attacks that took place through the course of the month of June, each successive attack was bigger than the previous one, and each one was the biggest up until that point in time. So right now, Ukraine needs those air defenses badly. As hardly as they're working to target Russia's drone production, Russia still has a stockpile of drones, both the ones that they built domestically and the ones they got from Iran. So it's not like destroying a couple of drone factories is going to fix all of this overnight. The air defense systems are still badly needed, and that is what Ukrainians are not getting right now. Now, this is ironic as hell. So, we have talked about China's role in all of this on and off. And on one hand, the fact that China chose not to participate in the economic isolation of Russia. So China has not imposed any sanctions on Russia, did not stop any trade agreements with it, and so on and so forth. Second, China kept insisting that while it continued trading with Russia, it had never, ever, ever supplied anything related to the military, anything related to the war, anything related to building weapons to Russia. Well, there seems to be some evidence that speaks to the contrary, and it comes at a very interesting time. So, on one hand, as part of the attack that was unleashed last night, Russian drones damaged Chinese consulate in Ukrainian city of Odessa. On the other hand, Chinese drone pieces were found following an attack in Kiev. So my question again to the government of China is, how does that feel, folks? These are your people in that consulate. These are your people. These are Chinese people in that building. Just because you're friends with Russia doesn't make you magically immune from Russian attacks. And at the same time, how do you explain that a component of a Russian-Iranian Shahed drone that is built in China ended up in Kiev? And not only that, but one that apparently has been supplied just recently. So it's not from like any of the previous attacks from like a year ago, whatever. This is now. So this puts China again in a very dubious position. Of course they're going to deny this. Of course they're going to say there is no proof. Again, the question is to the Chinese people, are you guys okay with this? And what happens the next time a Russian projectile, a Russian release projectile, damages an embassy, a consulate, with people in it, and the damage is more substantial? And then, of course, there's this. There's been another enormous attack on Kyiv, leaving 25 people injured that we know of as of right now, and 1 dead. This is from Kyiv Independent, and look at the editor's note. This is a developing story because they probably do not know the full scope of the damages at this time. So they're probably still looking for people under the rubble, as it always happens after such attacks. What we know right now is that this particular attack hit businesses, a school, a medical facility, some railway lines, and civilian infrastructure in multiple districts. But Russians keep saying that they do not target civilians, and after every single attack, they say that they had a series of military targets they planned to strike, and the targets have been achieved. Apparently, in this particular case, a 23-year-old, 8 months pregnant woman was a military target. More to come.